Okay, I have been talking on radio for the last few weeks about this. A book that isn't actually a book. It is a digital book that you can get on Kindle now. I can't even tell you for sure how I found it. It just kind of popped up. I was looking for something else. I clicked on it, which I never... Kindle also suggests that you should read it. All right. And then I clicked on that for some reason, and then I did something else I've never done, which is read the sample chapter. I did, and I'm telling you, I think it is one of the most important pieces of writing I have seen in quite some time. The Art of Being Unmistakable. Srini Rao is the guy who is the author. He is the heart of The Art of Being Unmistakable. And I reached out to him, was it last week?
I think it was like Monday of last week.
Yeah. And asked if you would be on the show. And you're not a guy that typically we don't run in the same circles.
We're kind of an odd pairing, wouldn't you say?
Yes. I mean, I put some carrot cake on because the producer said, let's see what you guys have in common. And we both have carrot cake in common. However, we have, I think, a soul in common, that we both know that people are not, it's like they're walking around in a fog, and they're not using or even understanding the power that they all have inside, right?
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting. I was thinking about this as I was sitting in the dressing room about kind of how my life has gone. And I was the poster child for society's life plan. I grew up in an Indian family. There were certain things that were expected, you know, straight A's. And you know, I credit my parents for that because they've given me a discipline that I brought into the work that I do even today. But what's interesting is you go through college and you get to a certain point. I got through college, and so at the end of college they say, hey, welcome to this thing called life. It's a masterpiece, but you can only paint with a few colors, meaning here are the career options that are put in front of you. And by the way, here's a bunch of imaginary lines. Make sure you don't color outside of them or don't paint outside of them.
Right.
And so that began a career of what has turned me into what I have called the self-proclaimed corporate misfit. I went to my first job. So there's always this inkling that something is wrong here, something is missing, and you're not seeing another side of this, that, hey, by the way, there's hundreds of other colors that you could paint this masterpiece with, but nobody's showing them to you. And by the way, that canvas is completely blank, and there's no instructions, there's no idea what's going to come. The outcomes on that canvas are completely uncertain.
Okay, so I've been having an argument with myself because I am a paint all out of the lines. And I've never liked anybody telling me what to do or how to do it. And I look at people and I see it in the box and I'm like, well, that's what you did. But that's not what I want to do. But there are people that are just box people, that they don't like an empty canvas. They don't know what to do with an empty canvas. So does this, and what we're going to talk about, does this fit everybody? Is everybody have...
Yeah, you know, here's the thing, because, you know, in a lot of ways, we're talking about it in the context of career. But what's great about the world we live in
life
today is that it doesn't matter whether it's in your career. If you want to create something, you have an opportunity to create it. Like, I am wearing a t-shirt that was made by a friend of mine because he had this desire to get a message out to the world on a t-shirt, and we couldn't do that 10 years ago. And now we can, and it's not limited to certain people. I think that we'd been brainwashed into this belief that this opportunity to make a dent in the universe or to change the world in some meaningful way was reserved for the select few, the Steve Jobs of the world, you know, the Mark Cubans of the world. But suddenly, what's happened is that technology is democratizing our ability to make and create things, and what's even cooler is that the people who buy these, the people who support all of this stuff, they create it because of the relationship they have with the person who created it. It's something special because it came from within. Everything that I've put out into the world has my signature on it. You know, I've talked about this in the book. And the thing is that that's not limited. And it doesn't matter what you do. You have an opportunity to put your signature on something. You know, I was thinking about boarding an airline yesterday, and I said, you know, this is one of the worst designed experiences we've ever had. Why has how can we make this a more pleasurable experience? And I thought, you know, why not, if I'm going to a certain destination, why not make my boarding pass a collector's item? And I have to give your producer credit for that, because that was his idea, not mine. But I thought, you know, that's such a simple example to say, let's take this boarding pass, and you know what? it's going to have, you know, it'll be like a postcard of the destination that I'm going to. Suddenly, it adds a little more pleasure to a process that most of us find agonizing.
But I think the world, I mean, I think you look even at airlines, I think the entire system is going to break down. I think we are seeing the Industrial Revolution, which happened in a 100-year period. I think the next 10 years is the 100-year period of the Industrial Revolution. It's that kind of profound change where you had barely electric lights and flushable toilets to refrigerators. That took 100 years. And we're going to have that kind of change in the next 10, because, you know, the singularity is coming, and when it comes, people don't understand what's happening. And so when I read, this is one of the first things I read in this that caught my eye, and it's actually in the preface, and it says, can a computer do it for you? Can somebody overseas do it cheaper? What I'm offering in demand, is it in demand in an age of abundance? The only job security, to the extent that it exists, will reside in your ability to be high concept, high touch. And I started thinking that, okay, this is a book about jobs, that understands about jobs, but I think it's much more than that. I think it is about change your entire life. Because once you go down this wormhole, right, you change everything. So let's start that there first with 3 minutes of who you are and how you came to this.
Wow. Okay. So, you know, as I mentioned, there was the Berkeley undergrad, the checkbox life, becoming the poster child for society's life plan. And as I said, I didn't fit. And so I kept getting fired from multiple jobs. I've been fired from almost every real job that I've been at, which is why I have such an aversion to real jobs. I don't like being in offices. I say I'm allergic to cubicles and corporate offices. And so, you know, this continued, but the thing is that nobody said, hey, there's another way, there's other options out here, because this was, I think, you know, post-2000, like the first dot-com bubble had burst. I graduated into one recession. And so after 10 years of sales jobs, about 7 years actually, of sales jobs and things that I just didn't like doing, I finally thought, you know what, I'm going to push the reset button on my life. I'm going to go to business school, and I'm going to wipe out this, you know, crucible of a resume, which is what a career counselor who worked with me on my business school application called it. And I thought, okay, this is it. This is a chance to reinvent myself. And so that summer, I ended up interning.
More education.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what we believed. That's what we thought was the answer. And so I ended up being an intern with Intuit's TurboTax group, and you know, at the end of the summer, not surprisingly now, knowing what I know about myself, I didn't get an offer. And my boss told me, he said, "I'm doing you a huge favor. Trust me." And I jokingly say, well, considering I don't particularly enjoy paying taxes, I guess not working on them for a living worked out okay. But where it really became interesting was when I graduated. I graduated in April 2009. So, you know, nobody plans for their life to have, you know, you graduate from, you know, 2 schools twice into recessions that are both horrendous. And that was rock bottom. That was it. It was kind of like, wow, I'm 30 years old. I have whatever financial aid money is left, and I moved home. I moved home. I literally was out of money. But in the process, you know, this is something I have to mention. One of the other things I discovered was this absolute love for surfing. And I'm not genetically predisposed for anything athletic. I was always the worst player. I was the most improved player on every sports team I've ever been on, which actually means you're the worst player on the team.
Right.
When, you know, it takes a season to be called that. So, and surfing requires an insane amount of athletic skill. But I found that it was this just beautiful escape from everything else that was going on in my life. It's like, wow, my life is a disaster. It's a train wreck. I'm at rock bottom. But 6 hours a day, I'm in this medium that completely changes that and makes it seem so different, so that my circumstances aren't going to become my identity. And in that process, I started playing with all these online tools. I ended up creating one blog. That eventually led to the formation of a show that I run today. Bit by bit, it all just started, you know, coming together. And I created this show called Blogcast FM, where I've interviewed 400 plus bloggers, authors, you know, content creators. I mean, the woman who wrote the foreword, the section that you were just reading, is a woman named Justine Musk, and I know her because she actually wrote she was one of the people I'd interviewed on my show. But I'm not going to tell you that it came without a lot of hurdles. There's been, I mean, this has been a roller coaster ride.
Could you say, and then we have to take a quick break, but if you were my son and you had finished everything and you said to me, I'm going to go surfing, I'd say, what? I'd have a really hard time. My father had a really hard time with me when I said, I'm going to leave radio. I was 35 years old. I'm going to leave radio. And he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I don't know. But it was the moment of complete surrender. It was like, I don't know. I'm just no longer going to do what is not inside of me. Right? My dad said, well, why don't you then find out what's inside of you? And that's what you did, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's deeply informed every single part of my life. I mean, I jokingly say the only thing I ever really wanted was to be able to surf every day. And I said, if, you know, however that was facilitated, I would do everything to make sure that happened.
So let's go into when we come back, I want to talk to you about the difference between a map versus a compass, a wish list versus prophecy, and the check boxes, the no BS version of you. We'll do that in a minute. Back in a second.
How hitting rock bottom, it kind of opens up other opportunities in your life. It seems like this worst case scenario, but it kind of makes you reevaluate what's important in your life. And you know, and it's something I've experienced, not to the degree that you have, but I know that there have been really just low points in my life, and what came after them, you're almost thankful for those low points because you're really grateful for the perspective that they gave you.
Most people don't know that the rock bottom, you will remember the best times of your life as the part that you struggled the most, right?
Yeah.
So you hit the surfboard, and if I'm understanding this sequence right, you then started looking at the check boxes of your life. And explain the check boxes and the no BS version of you.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the check boxes really are sort of these predetermined rules by which everybody says you should live your life. You know, you go to school, you go to a better school, you get a job, hopefully you get promoted at that job, you climb the ladder, then you go back and get more education, and then you keep climbing until supposedly you're going to reach this pinnacle. And that pinnacle is really a myth because
it's misery.
Well, the truth is that so few people actually reach that, and even the ones that do
don't like it. I've never met anybody at the very top that is really happy. I never have.
Well, and that's the thing, because so many choices were made for them. They weren't their own choices along the way. And so as a result, you know, it's interesting, right? What we do is so many jobs and so many careers are based on creating this sort of false version of who you are, what I call sort of the BS version of who you are. I remember when I applied to business school, I thought, wow, we've really manufactured something that will meet the criteria of an admissions counselor, but this is no longer me. Looking back now, I think, wow, that was really just fabricated, and that's what a resume is to me. But what's awesome now is that we can paint a full and real picture of who we are underneath all of those things, and that's, you know, what I say, put your signature on it. Do something that nobody else could do, that could only come from within you, and that's amazing. That's beautiful.
But that is really, for most people, that's really hard to get your arms around.
Yeah,
it's really hard. It's really. Did you ever feel like, I don't know if that's in me. I don't know if anything else is in me.
I feel like that every day.
Okay.
I don't think that changes. I think that, you know, I think that people have this idea that, hey, you know, you're Srini, you're crazy, you're audacious, you know, you have this in you. But, you know, I told somebody, one of my friends says that your whole life will change in one brief moment of audacity. But what's interesting is that brief moments of audacity, they have to become a habit, and each one builds on the next one. Really, you know, I could never have planned this or predicted this. I didn't write this book, Glenn, so that I would end up sitting here in this chair talking to you.
Sure.
I wrote this book because I had something to say that I felt was really meaningful to me personally. I just wanted a piece of work in the world. And despite interviewing 400 people, building a semi-popular blog and show, you know what, there's no publisher knocking on my door. So I thought, I said, I'm done. I'm not going to wait. This is important to me. And the people who want it will get it in their hands, and let's see what happens.
Do you think that it is important that, because this occurs to me every day, maybe I've already done what I was supposed to do. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. And because I think that way at times, I question it all the time. Maybe I mean, there's no reason why all of this has to go on. There's no reason. I don't need it. I don't want it. But it is that constant questioning that pulls me back to who I am, that allows me to continue to think differently and find success. Because the minute I owe money on all of this and I have to make the note, the minute I'm under pressure, the minute I have something, then it all goes away, right? So speak a little bit to the thought of when you want it, it's not the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, what we're talking about here is ego, right? I mean, all those things are based on your ego, and you can't create anything that's truly remarkable when it comes from a place of ego. You can't create anything that's from within you, because your ego isn't the real version of you. Your ego does things based on validation and the accolades that might occur. I mean, like I said, I had no idea, and I mean, we're the oddest pairing in the world. I mean, all you have to do is look at my Facebook feed to realize that. I'm a beach bum surfer from Berkeley, and from what I know about you and what
I'm
been
from
told,
Seattle, Washington, so I'm not that different.
And yet, we have this common ground that transcends whatever our political or religious beliefs are, because we believe that there's something powerful going on here as a society. Like, we both share that common belief.
I think that's the secret. That's why, you know who Penn Jillette is? Mm-hmm. Okay. Penn Jillette and I are good friends because Penn is a guy who, he's an atheist. Oh, I'm devoutly Christian, but I don't mind I don't care. You know what I mean? He's a good, decent guy. He sees me as a good, decent guy. We get along. I don't need to change his life. He doesn't change mine. And we just kind of look at the world and say, this is crazy, isn't it? More people should just be happy. More people should just be free, be them, and stop trying to control people. That's where I think most people connect, is they just leave me alone, man. Just let me do my thing.
Well, I want to comment on something you said earlier. You said, what if this is it? And, to me, I kind of said, I think about this, right? I think we try to compartmentalize our life and say, okay, well, this is a career. And once I'm done with this career, that's it. I'm done. It's a career. But the thing is that it doesn't have to be. Like, every day of your life is a blank canvas from which you can create something that doesn't exist.
Difference in, you have children?
No.
Okay. Difference, I think, comes from when you have all of this. It's not like, I'm just going to pick up and go. You have 300 employees and everything else. And so it does change. Before, when I could change everything in my own life because it was just me, I could just go, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Right.
But now you do have responsibility of crap. And you look at that every day. And so, I mean, I weigh crap versus life. You know what I mean? Every day. Is this... I don't want to build more crap. I don't want to build more crap that ends up in somebody else's crap. I just want to do what I'm supposed to do. And so it's a real, at least for me, it's a real challenge to make sure that I lived half my life unauthentic. I lived half my life being somebody that I wasn't, being somebody that somebody else created, knowingly or unknowingly, and me going along with it and buying into that crap. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that ever again. And I really don't want to live in a world that I created, that I get to it and go, ick. I don't like any of that either. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, and that's kind of what's really cool about the world we live in. Yeah, I'm not saying, the whole point of Art of Being Unmistakable, is not, go ditch your job and do something crazy. I mean, I've told this to people, and I'm going to tell it to you now in front of a lot of people. I'm 35 years old and I live at my parents' house. And I made a decision when I got out of business school. I realized, and this is a lot of reflecting I've been doing over the last 3 to 4 days because I knew I was going to be here, is that every decision I had made up until that point in my life led to that moment. And I knew that I was going to have to make drastically different decisions if I didn't want to end up there again. And those decisions might be unpopular, they might come with a lot of stigmas, but I knew that if I didn't make similar decisions and I was willing to take some serious chances, the result would be completely different.
So there's a difference. I got to wrap up in just a sec. Can you give me 30 seconds, 40 seconds? Yes, no? Yes. Okay. Tell me the difference, because I have a problem. I have no problem with families that choose to stay together, like in Italy and everything else, everybody has fun and whatever. I have a real problem with people who are living off their parents.
Sure.
No problem with crashing with people until you get on your feet, but there's a difference, because I just talked about it at the very beginning of the show, where I'm a child until I'm 33 years old. You're not a child. You're not a child. You're a man. And so what is the difference between the two?
Well, I mean, I made a choice because it was going to give me leverage to get to where I wanted to go.
Right. And your parents were willing to do it.
And they were willing to do it. I mean, they were willing to support that.
Okay. Good. Back in just a second. All right. Name of the book. I can't recommend it highly enough. The Art of Being Unmistakable. It is the future, it is what's coming, and it is the way out of just about every mess the world finds itself in. I want to talk about, we have about 4 minutes. I want to talk about a few things. First, mimic versus model. Tell me what that is.
Well, this is a big passion of mine. One of the things that I get a view into the subculture of the web that most people don't, because I have a show where I interview people. And so often, I mean, I'm constantly looking for the most oddball, most unique people I can find. And this is hard. It's not easy. What makes this so challenging is we provide everybody with best practices and things you can do and how to grow a following. And the danger of that, and one of the problems we're running into, is that people see what works and they try to make it better. And they try to do it that way. What they miss is how to make it different. This goes back to how do you put your signature on it? How do you deliver an experience that only you could deliver, that nobody else could? And that's, in my mind, being unmistakable. This isn't just an ethos for like the individual. This is something we have to do in our products. This is something we have to do in our services. But we have that at our disposal. Being unmistakable and making yourself that way, that's a choice. Like, anybody who's working at some graphic design department in one of the airlines we talked about could go and say, you know what, from now on, we're going to print the destinations wherever you're going on boarding passes, because we think it would be a more pleasurable experience. And you know what? Somebody will talk about that. But somebody actually has to make the choice to do it and say, you know what? We're going to do that. And so it's about taking your signature and putting it on things. I had a friend who had a performing arts background. She says, what do you think? I should sing marketing tips? I said, why not? Nobody else could do that. Only you could do that. So
okay, so mimic versus model, meaning don't find something good and then just try to make it better.
Well, I think we can look at people who are good at what they do as role models and mentors and really develop taste. But at a certain point, you have to bring your own flavor to it.
And that kind of goes into truth and honesty, because if you have truth and honesty, you're not modeling. Or you're not mimicking.
No, not at all.
So explain truth and honesty.
Well, I mean, if you look at the Amazon description of this book, I told you I committed career suicide, one Facebook status update at a time. The irony is that I think I won't be living at my parents' house any longer.
Right.
I mean, it's really weird, right? Like everything about this basically says, like any branding expert would say, this is a disaster. Nobody is going to hire you based on doing all the searches of all these things that they found, because I wrote this entire book through Facebook status updates. It was done in a very, very public way. And on my 34th birthday, I just outed myself completely. I talked about the jobs I'd been fired from. I talked about the relationships I'd failed at. And I talked about the fact that letting all of this go was amazing. Because, and here's the thing. I thought it was career suicide. What I found was that it was actually the thing that connected people to me like they had never connected before. Because there's something about, because the thing is, when you have nothing left but your truth, what else are you going to share? All the bad things that could have happened to me in my life, and there are people who live far worse lives than I have, that have experienced far worse catastrophes. But in the context of my life, all the things that could have possibly gone wrong pretty much did. I was like, okay, what else could possibly go wrong here? So the only thing left is to start telling the truth. And as I've learned in the last few weeks,
set you free.
The truth actually does something mind-blowingly cool to your life. And it's terrifying to do it.
I tell you, I'm smiling at you because anybody who has watched me or listened to me for a very long time knows why I like you and connect to this book. The day I thought I was going to end my career, I told the truth. And somebody had pushed me up against the wall on the air, and I thought to myself, you know what? I don't have anything to lose. I don't really give a flying crap anymore. And I said, you know what? You don't know me at all. Let me tell you who I am. And this is right after I sobered up. And so I got a lot of stuff that I hadn't shared. And I said, let me tell you who I am and the mistakes I've made. I turned off the microphone and I looked at one of the producers and I said, write it down. This is the day that Glenn Beck ended his career. It started my career because people came up and said, oh, I know who you are. You know what? I've been there. And so it was honest, and that's what people are afraid of the most. Okay, real quick, give me the line. We were talking about it off the air. Yeah. Give me the one line of this book. This sums it up.
Yeah.
5 seconds.
Art that rewards its creator long after the average person would quit is admired, but it's rarely encouraged.
Get the book. Back in a minute. I have a guy on tonight that wrote the book, The Art of Being Unmistakable. It is only a Kindle book. It should be a book on on everybody's shelf, but you can only get it online right now through Kindle. I've never met him before. I don't know him from Adam. His father was a college professor. He went to, I think, Berkeley. And he went to college, and then he went and got other degrees and just kept going and going and going. And he found his life completely empty and without meaning. And so he lost his job and was like, you know what, I'm going to surf. I want to learn how to surf. I've always wanted to be a surfer. I'm going to learn how to surf. And then after the tide changes, I will go and I'll get on a suit and I'll change in my car and I'll go and see if I can get a job someplace. But in that time period, he learned who he really was. Tonight, you will hear his story at 5 o'clock, and it is one that I cannot recommend highly enough. The answer to getting rid of your fear is in a book called The Art of Being Unmistakable. Read it. It is the future. It's fear of failure. It's fear of what other people think. It's fear of being wrong. It's fear. The biggest fear of all, that I will be alone. If I make this choice, I will be alone. Because if I fail, others will think less of me. I could lose my job. My wife or my husband might leave me. My friends won't return my calls. My children will be embarrassed of me. And in the end, I will be alone. How many of us have experienced this already? Just because you wanted to speak your mind. You know this to be true. But there's two sides to that coin. There's faith and there's fear. Faith teaches us you're never, ever, ever alone. Fear begets more fear. And the ultimate fear of being alone. We are all born. We are all created equal. What does that mean? We are all born with certain things that everybody knows is true. You are born perfect. You're born just the way you were supposed to be born. Some of us were born in households that had great parents. Some were born in households that had horrible parents or no parents. Some of us were born into great wealth. Some of us were born into great poverty. And the giants of the past, some of them were born in slavery. Frederick Douglass, a giant. George Washington Carver, a giant. Born in slavery. So how did he make it? How did they make it? How did they do it? They recognize that all men are created equal. In other words, we are all a blank canvas. We're all a blank piece of paper. A blank page. Okay, that's something that most people can get their arms around. What they have a hard time getting their arms around is this. Every day is a blank page. Every day you open up your eyes, you can either start over again or you can continue writing on a page that you disagree with. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that way. I don't want to be in this job. I don't want to have this attitude. And so you either continue writing it, or even worse, you have somebody else write it for you.
You can do it if you want. You can have your parents write it for you, even if your parents are dead. Are they still writing what's on your page? Are you still living the life that your parents told you you were going to live? Are you still living the things that your family told you you would be? Told you who you are? Who are you really? And who told you you were going to be that person? Did you? You can let your boss write it. You're nothing. You'll never make it. Or you just stick with me and you'll be a star. Who's writing on your page? Many people want the government to write it now. Many people just like, I just want to, you know what? I just want to be left alone and just whatever. But how can the government write it? How can anybody else write it? They don't even know you. They don't know you. The story that anybody else will write for you is the one that pleases them. The one that will make them feel good at your expense. One that will serve their needs, not yours. As the light rises on every day, you are given a choice. You can write your own story. You can write a bold adventure that will be told for generations to come. You can write one where you think that when you're telling this, when you're old and gray, and you're telling it to your grandchildren, they will be enraptured every day that you tell your story of your life. And they will say, wait, Grandpa, wait, what happened? I'll tell you tomorrow. Did you get the girl? Did you get the job? Did you save them? Did you save yourself? What happened? You can tell a story that is filled with lessons and learning and joy and pain. Or you can let somebody else write it for you. But I'm telling you now, it will be an etching. It will be a pencil line drawing. It will have no color in it. The light that is inside of you, it is pleading with you to let it shine. But only you can find it. It may be so buried down inside of you that you don't even know that it really exists. You just have this feeling that something's not right. It is the most frustrating feeling you'll ever have. I know, because I have it. I have it right now. I just left a meeting a few minutes ago. And I said, guys, I can't tell you how to fix it. I can just tell you that it's not right. It's not right, and it's a feeling, and it is the most frustrating thing because I know it, but I keep digging, and I can't find it. But I know it's there. And I know it's there because I've gone through this before. As a recovering alcoholic, I went through it in the 90s, and I didn't think the guy that I am today existed. If I would have said to me in 1990 that the guy you will be in 2010, this is who you'll be. Not the stuff you'll have, not the job you'll have. This is who you'll be. I would have said, you're crazy. I'd never be that guy. I could never be that guy. Because I was afraid. I was afraid to believe that I could be better than I am. Find it. Feel it. Share it. What is inside of you? Fear? Yep. There's going to be a lot of that. And in fact, I think there's going to be more of that in the days to come. But that will only make your story worth telling even more. A story worthy enough to be told is a story that breaks through the fear. And I promise you, just when you feel like quitting, just when you feel that maybe I'm going to let somebody else write my story because I'm tired, I can't do it anymore, I promise you, that is just at the point when you're about to do the most amazing work in your life. I don't know if you've already started writing your story today. Write a new one. Start with a blank page. It is your choice. It is your life and no one else's. Find your story. And maybe someday, somebody like me will be lucky enough to tell it to others.